Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the WCS America Round of 16 Group D. Back with Todd here at the desk. Interesting first game. Obviously, we've already talked about it. Our next matchup is equally interesting for a number of different reasons. It features a player who has sort of come back from the dead, as it were. He'd taken 2 years before he won a Premier tournament before taking the 2013 WCS Season 2 Global Finals, Bomber. And we're talking about a man who hasn't had a decent result for a couple of years, quite frankly. I mean, third in Lone Star Clash 2, and that was in 2012. It feels like even longer than that ago, but it was 2012. CranK. So between the two, they've had their fair share of barren years, but they've both seemingly done well as well. They've kind of always been there. Does that make sense? They've always been there or thereabouts and been around. You kind of expect them to have good results, but perhaps Bomber more so.
Yeah. I was going to say that. I think Bomber has been there. He's been around a lot more than CranK in big tournaments. He won an MLG a while back. He won WCS Europe, actually WCS World Final Season 2 in Germany. So Bomber, I would say, is the favorite here. But CranK, in the round of 32, he beat Alive 2 and Major 2. And the games didn't even look that difficult. It was a formality for him. So I would say he's probably been training a lot versus Terran and going into this group as well. I mean, not even just for the round of 32, going into this group, he has two very strong Terrans. He needs to beat at least one of them. This is going to be surely a lot more interesting than the first match we saw here, because that was...
we would hope so.
Yeah,
we would hope so.
Let's
just take a quick look at the bracket just to confirm our first match and show you where Polt went through. 2-0 against the Chinese Zerg Shigua, who will go down to the lower bracket. He'll play the loser of Bomber and CranK. Bomber or CranK will go through to play Polt, and then those two will play off for the first position in the gold box, which will take them through to the quarterfinals. These are the last two places available, of course, and don't forget, after this, we'll also have the round of 8 draw as well. So stick around after the last match and we'll find out exactly who goes through. These two have got very interesting statistics. Right now, CranK's PVT is at an all-time low. It's 48.5%. So not the greatest statistics going into a big PVT game. Bomber, on the other hand, his TVP is ranked 6th in the world, 63.9%. That's scary.
Thank you for destroying my pre-statistic talk here. You know, statistics, as good as they are, I really feel like it's a lot about current form. Goes like this, and like I said, I think CranK, he has two very strong turns to face here. He's probably prepared a ton. He showed good things in round of 32, and I'm going to stick with my original prediction, which is it's going to be tough games. It's going to be close games. And it's also a clash of style. Bomber is a guy who's very good at pulling SCVs, and if you're a generic Protoss that likes to play Standard and play Colossus, you're going to be in trouble against his style. But CranK is somebody that can do anything, and going up against Bomber, surely he knows what to expect, and that's going to give him an advantage. Whereas if you're in Bomber's shoes here, you shouldn't really know what to expect of CranK. He's been playing a lot of different builds in the round of 32.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you about that, because kind of Bomber knows that CranK can be a bit scary sometimes with some of the stuff he can do, but likewise, if you go back to the middle of last year when Bomber was playing some of his best StarCraft for a while, he was also massively unpredictable. I remember the 3 barracks rush on the right-hand side of, I can't remember what the map was that he used, but it was against Jadong or Scarlet in one of the earlier rounds of WCS. It was just ridiculous. He was pulling out proxy stuff all over the place. And it's like, as a Terran, you just kind of go, wow, what's he doing right now? That's nuts. So he's got some unpredictability about him as well. Although, it has to be said, round of 32 in Korea, Season 3, was a really big disappointment for him. I mean, having won the World Championship Series Global Finals in Season 2 and done very well in Korea in the first 2 seasons, suddenly to then disappear out of the round of 32, kind of odd, which is, I think, partly what made him say, okay, I've got one shot at qualifying for America, I'm going to go and take it, which he took. He had one shot at getting through Challenger into Premier League, which he took, and now we've got him in WCS America. Oddly, though, he's now in Europe. And he's in the city that he won the WCS Season 2 Global Finals.
Oh, I see what you did there. Yeah, that's interesting to think about this. I think Bomber has a history of inconsistency a little bit. You know, the Bomber law and all that. We're not yet very, very far into the tournament, so the law is not supposed to be applied just yet. But sometimes it really feels like he's going to be the favorite and he bombs out randomly, no pun intended, of the tournament. And sometimes you're like, well, Bomber is not necessarily in his best shape, and then suddenly he just like at BlizzCon he beats Sulky and all these guys, and you're like, oh my god, this guy actually is sick. So which bomber is going to show up today, I think, is also going to decide a lot of what happens in this group and what happens in this second match.
Okay, thank you very much, Todd. We're about to head over to our commentary team, who are ready and waiting, and still like a child at Christmas Eve. This is going to be another fantastic matchup. This one may be even better than the first game. Let's hope it is in terms of action anyway. Once CranK said in an interview, I don't really care about winning. I'm pretty sure that's a lie. Let's find out whether he really does care, because he's going head-to-head with an absolute monster Korean Terran. Is he going to drop bombs, or is it going to crank it up? Let's find out with our commentary team. Nathanias, take it away.
Thank you, Paul. It's a pleasure to come in for another Terran-based matchup, at least for me. And now I got my Protoss buddy Rotterdam for the other side of the action. This is going to be a good match.
Yeah, it should be a very fun match. As Todd mentioned already, he went through the run of 32, CranK that is, defeating 2 Terran opponents. And I remember the games quite well, especially the series against Alive. One game was a proxy oracle that did way too much damage. And the second game, he's like, I think Alive is going to go command center first over here on Yeonsu. And he did. So he built 2 gateways in his base. And Nathan, you don't want to find 2 gateways in your base if you go command center first.
You do not. CranK is the type of player that sits in your nightmares if you're the kind of person that ladders a lot. Every build imaginable that you think is difficult to hold off, CranK can pull off perfectly. And that makes him the ultimate threat because he can also play a solid macro game. But I really feel like it comes down a lot to how do you prepare for a player like CranK?
It's hard. Let's take a look at the map veto process, because we might see something different than we've seen in the previous days. As Altazim, Stronghold and Daedalus Point being vetoed, that's nothing too crazy just yet. But I do wonder what the next set of vetoes is going to be, because if I look at that map, I was like, see, Bomber vetoing Polar Knight is not shocking, but it's already like, okay, it's not a horrible map for Terran.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. He hasn't immediately jumped on anything like Heavy Rain or Yeonsu, 2 maps where Blink could certainly be pretty good. And then, of course, Frost is still open. Whether or not you want to play the macro game out, you still have to keep in mind the possibility that you can hide tech on that map, something that, definitely wouldn't be shocking if CranK did.
I find it interesting that both Heavy Rain and Polar Knight being vetoed, I think 2 maps that are excellent for drops if you get into that mid to mid-late game, or mid-late phase in the game. It can be very difficult. One observer is not going to cut it. You're going to need multiple observers to keep track on all those medevacs floating around. So I'm not too surprised that CranK decides to remove Heavy Rain. It is an excellent Blinkstalker map, but if that's not, your style of play, then that map suddenly becomes a little difficult as a Protoss player. Our first map is going to be Yeonsu. Second map will probably be Habitation Station then, and last but not least, of course, good old Frost. We couldn't possibly play a best of 3 without Frost, even though it did happen twice today. I said earlier today it was the first time, but apparently it happened twice already.
We've only in the very end so far, this group at least, we've started to see a lot more of those vetoes of Frost come in. And, looking at Yeonsu as a map, I'm kind of interested to see how the styles clash compared to some of the other Terran Protoss that we've seen today. Tasia, for example, played a very patient style, not really forcing many drops. And I'm wondering, is Bomber, is this a trend that's going to start to peak up? Are we going to see a lot more aggression, more action come out of him? And just, looking at Bomber, he's the player that a lot of people, when you talk about him, he's been around forever, basically, in StarCraft 2. And he can pretty much play any style.
Yes, but lately he's shown a lot of tendency to open 3 racks though. He's been doing that for a long time, and he's doing it over, in a consistent amount of games as well. It's not like once or twice. Bomber is opening 3 racks. It's been multiple times, Reaper opening into a command center on the low ground with a 3 racks as follow-up. When I asked him about this in Sao Paulo, and that's already 2 months ago, but I don't think that a whole lot of that, or a whole lot of his playstyle has changed ever since. He said like, Protoss play is too greedy these days, so I want to punish them if I can. It's also interesting that I feel that Bomber was one of the very first Terrans to start using Widow Mines against Protoss in that mid to mid-late game, in the mid-late phase in the game. I don't know why I try to keep saying that when it doesn't come out properly, but he was already using the Widow Mines before they got the Widow Mine buff. And when I was reading the patch note that Blizzard released back then, like, we've been seeing some Widow Mines in TVP, and we actually really like it, so we decided to give him a small buff because we want to see it more often. I thought of Bomber immediately. He's like, well, he's the guy that jumps to mind. He's the one that's been doing it more than almost any other Terran out there.
Yeah, Bomber definitely comes to mind. Him and players like TY, I think, showed us some really cool games and some cool things that you can do, and they've had a pretty big impact. I don't think much reminder needs to be paid to the Polar Knight game that Tasia played versus Arthur. The mines were tantamount to his hold of the Blink and eventually winning that game. So I'm interested to see Bomber pull this out. I'd love to see him use the mines, but will the game reach that stage is a big question. Is CranK going to play a style that's necessarily viable against?
Exactly. Like, I mean, I feel like the reason why we started to see mines is just because to make it a little harder on the Protoss, that they can't just send a bunch of charge loads around your army and the Terran has to micro their ass off. No, it actually, you as Protoss, you have to be much more careful about how you engage the Terran army right now if there are 4 or 5 Widow mines clumped up. But above all, this weekend, it's been all about the Colossus, man.
Yeah, I think it's something that a lot of people would have said is coming. I talked about it quite a bit before all of this began. In Colossus-based play, everybody's been seeing it a little bit more. But, well, this guy see it actually already on the minimap, can see a little trickster moving out. We have, this guy needs to be prepared for it in the top right. The blue Terran player is, well, he's teamly sponsored by Rebel. It is Bomber.
Of course, big shout out to Red Bull for all the love they have been showing to esports in the previous months. Then again, they did take away my life partner, so I'm still a little heartbroken by that. But I think I'm gonna have to forgive them, Nathan, because they do so much cool stuff that you gotta love them.
Yeah, I don't know, Kev. I think things will get better in the future. No worries. The question is, will this cheesy man, the man who has brought the German cheddar to the top of the map, our red Protoss from Axiom, prevail? It is CranK. Oh, proxy gates, you said it.
Yep, and we're going to talk about this immediately, as there is a gate being proxied over here on the north side of the map, but it's a little different than what he did against Alive. Back then, it was the probe in the base, hiding 2 gateways. This time, however, it's a little further away. I think he's going to drop an assimilator as well, and I think this is like hoping for Zealot doing some damage, and then Stalker as follow-up, and Terran can never stabilize. However, looking at the main of Bomber, we see the Rex go down, we see the refinery going down. Seems like Bomber should be okay against this, Nathan.
Yeah, this map never really crossed me as a command center first map, and it feels weird because this can be a difficult build to hold off, but it always seems like these top-level Terrans never really have difficulty with it. It comes down to Bomber hasn't sent an SCV out to scout, so he doesn't know that anything's been proxied, and CranK immediately chrono boosting that Zealot out. The SCV will go to the natural area, but you know, it's not really too far from that first ramp to see this gateway. The question is, does he check for it? And it looks like no.
He's so close to it, but I still don't think it's going to be that bad for Bomber. And this is still a build, guys, that you want to do some damage with, because let's not forget, it's a pylon and a gateway, and it slowed CranK's economy down early on. So if this doesn't do any economic damage, that's just not the position where you want to find yourself in. We see, I believe, a second. No, that's a probe right next to the gate. The first Zealot is about to spawn. No, it's actually, he's going to wait for 2 Zealots. That's interesting. That might be a little better, because if the reactor gets added right now, 1 Reaper is going to have a pretty hard time shooting down 2 Zealots.
Bomber engineer may blocks. I think the 2 Zealots is if he tries to kite the one of the Zealots with the Reaper, the other one can still just go over towards the mineral line. And that Reaper, he's already halfway across the map. Now he's going to come back. I think he's starting to realize, okay, something's weird here. My SCV didn't find a gateway in that main.
So this is actually a little tricky now. Interesting way that CranK went at it. He saved the first Zealot, and now with 2 Zealots, it suddenly looks a little better. He still needs to do quite a bit of damage. How many SCVs will he get?
Well, he's got this around with those workers. He's trying to peel off the weaker ones, and he's done a somewhat reasonable job. Both Zealots are dead. He's total lost 3 SCVs, and for this type of investment, I wouldn't say he's dead, but he's not out of the water yet. This Stalker can easily take out this Reaper. He needs to pull more SCVs off the line. A few of these are already weak. I expect to see CranK target fire down those weak ones. He's already picked off one of them, and this is still awkward for Bomber. He still hasn't started his command center. He still has an engineer mate blocking his opponent's natural, though, so he knows that CranK is kind of forced to commit.
Yeah, he's losing a lot, though. I really like the way that this is played out for CranK. I'm surprised that it did so well. That bunker is still not done yet. There are 2 Marines and a Reaper right now. He's starting to shoot at the high HP Stalker, so it's going to take a little while. These Stalkers are low on HP, but guys, Stalkers should not die to Marines. And if there is no bunker, Bomber is going to have a lot of trouble stabilizing over here.
Yeah, Bomber started his command center. He's feeling pretty bold in the face of this aggression.
The Reaper can get the Stalker.
Yeah, Reaper gets the last hit on that Stalker.
Sick.
Not too bad. If he can finish this bunker, I don't think there's enough, because there's no mothership core on the map. There's nothing to actually break this, and I'm suddenly really liking this engineering bay block. If Bomber does not die to this, CranK is kind of stuck. He has to send everything back across the map if he has anything left after this push.
Yep, well, bunker will finish up, and for now, Bomber is out of the woods. He took economic damage, though, guys. We can see 7 workers ahead for CranK. I think this is relatively even, or maybe even a minor advantage for CranK, because that command center is on the high ground as well. It's going to take a little while. It is so important for Bomber that he kept that Reaper alive, guys, because a player like CranK, no way is he going to lose a Stalker against Marines. That just does not happen. Stalkers are too quick for that, but that Reaper is quicker than the Stalker, so there's nothing CranK can do if that Reaper is still alive and decides to, you know, give that final shot off.
You know, we see the Stargate being proxied in the Reaper. I mean, if he were to just zoom up the left side of this map, he would spot it, but, you know, is Bomber aware? You know, would he expect CranK to be the person to follow up his cheese with another aggressive plan? He's in the neighborhood. He just needs to knock on the door. He does not see it. That's still be tricky. You know, he finds the gateway, so the Marines can shut this down without too much trouble. But that's still pretty annoying.
Yep, there are quite a few Marines out on the map. Marines actually going to try to make their way across the map. Stalker is going to see it though. Good movement there by CranK. It looks like a minor thing, but just the fact that he sees those Marines moving forward already helps him a little bit. There is a third Rex going down, so it's still that 3 Rex opening that Bomber has shown us so often over the course of the last few months.
Yeah, this is still a little bit scary. That Oracle is on the way. Bomber's Reaper moves out, but the Marines came on. Okay, this is I think one of the most important parts of this, because he hasn't seen the Stargate, but if he moves those Marines out, there's like 5 or so SCVs that could get instantly killed since they've lost health with the Zealots earlier.
Oh, the Reaper is so close to the Stargate again. I feel like Bomber has a good idea what's going on. He just hasn't scouted it yet, and that's why he might start second-guessing himself. He's like, I really feel like I'm playing against an Oracle, but there's no Oracle, there's no Stargate, so what is going on?
The Reaper didn't see any tech, but I don't think he got behind that main mineral line. So it is, as you said, it's hard to know exactly what's going on. Here comes that Oracle. The Marines are on the natural. Bomber's actually starting to leave his base. The Reaper jumps out of that main. He's left just enough Marines behind, 5 of them here.
One of them took a little bit of damage already.
Yeah, he actually could pick off, if he went straight for the Marines, he could have picked most of them off, but he chooses to just grab a couple SCVs instead, and he's got 4 kills. Not bad at all.
Nope, a second Oracle is on the way as well. 2 Oracles can definitely do some damage, but nice Marine movement there by Bomber. Unfortunately for him, he won't get that final hit off. Oh, but he still gets it.
Whoa, it loses the first Oracle. The second Oracle takes a lot of damage, not really killing too much. A little bit sloppy there from CranK.
Yeah, now I'm starting to sort of like Bomber's position. Yes, he's down 10 workers, but he has a lot of pretty strong units out on the map. While CranK, on the other hand, the only thing he has are those 2 Stalkers, of which one of them took already a beating. But of course, he will have Photon Overcharge, the saving grace of a Protoss player.
Yeah, this is still a lot of units from Bomber. He's about 30 seconds away from having his stim. And with the sentry there, I don't think he'll try anything so bold as to run up that ramp into the main base. Actually, CranK's even positioned his army on top of that ramp just in case.
He might not run up the ramp, but he might just run into the natural. I still think he's going to trade relatively well. He's going to kill so many workers, don't you think so? I think he's going to do it.
Yeah, actually, I think, especially if he force fields that ramp, then he can't move his units to help at the natural. Bomber's kind of put him in a very compromising position, as it were, and the Reaper still goes back into the main to distract him.
Yeah, maybe pull the units out of position as well. I think this might be the moment that Bomber is going to go for it. Yes, Tim, he could do it.
Yeah, everything's pulled back. All sentries.
The Mothership Core, he's going to go for the Mothership Core.
He's not looking. Okay, there. So he'll be able to kill it. Well, I guess he's just going to go for the natural instead. But he can't be force fielded at the ramp. Now he's like, well, you don't have enough energy to Photon Overcharge your main base as well. Kills the Mothership Core. And there's not enough here to kill this off.
This first stim is going to run out in the near future, though. And with the second stim, this army is going to be relatively low on HP. I think eventually CranK will stabilize, but at what cost? How many probes is he going to lose?
Yeah, quite a few. Actually, a couple of these Marines run straight in, but the probes move through. And the thing about this is, Bomber, he's thrown away a good number of units. He's killed a couple of workers, but he's completely recovered from any losses that he would have had from the Oracles. It's still a bit of an awkward situation. I still prefer Bomber's position.
Do you think Bomber should have just gone for the natural?
I think he could have killed every probe there if he tried, but he didn't want. I guess he just didn't want to fight in the Photon Overcharge.
Yeah, but he still took quite a few shots. I felt he was a little indecisive. Either way, he's still setting himself up in a good position, guys, because right now, CranK has nothing that's very good in detecting drops. He has 1 Oracle out on the map, but that's it. He doesn't have observers in location. He doesn't have Blink Stalkers to shoot those medevacs down. This is a scenario, as a Protoss player, you have to play it out very well, not to take damage of these drops.
Yeah, the Stalker was able to see him at the tower, but the Oracle goes in for the counterattack. There's a few Marines here and a missile turret that's not quite positioned to cover it. Bomber, though, he just charges right down that ramp. The whole army was inside of the main base, and these are the probe kills we were talking about before. GG, Bomber. Man, I would have died right to that first double zealot attack. Yeah. What a very on-point attack from CranK, and Bomber just... He's a hard guy to kill.
He ain't impressed. Yeah, that was the Bomber game, the type of Bomber game that you expect and that people started to love Bomber for as well. He always brings aggression to the table. It doesn't really matter how the early game unfolds. As soon as he can counterattack, he will counterattack, and as soon as the first attack is done, the drops start flying in. I love that he unloaded the units in the main, and he's like, well, I guess everything is in your main, so I'm just gonna run down this ramp. And as I said, I can't really fault CranK too much for that, because it is so hard to not take a lot of damage against drops if you do not have observers, if you do not have blink stalkers or anything that's good against it. If you just have those slow gateway units running around, no photon overcharge to top it all off. Borderline impossible not to take damage of drops.
And that whole early game just felt so hectic. He blindly engineering bay blocks. He gets his bunker a little bit later. He even starts his command center as he's being pushed. I just feel like there were a lot of opportunities for things to go wrong for either of those players. And the fact that it even went on that long was kind of interesting in and of itself.
Do you think it would have been better for CranK if he didn't try to suicide those zealots as he did? Like, I know that he wanted to do academic damage, but I think making sure that they won't get surrounded is more important than picking up 1 or 2 kills. Because I feel as long as they won't get surrounded, they're not going to die in the near future, because it was just 1 Reaper and SCVs.
I feel like he was really scared of that Reaper. Because you kind of saw the Zealots were trying to move and stay in between the mineral patches so that they couldn't be surrounded. And eventually he just, I guess he felt a little bit panicked by it. And
yeah, maybe it was like, oh, I do need to do some economic damage. I'm just going to go for it. I think
only 3 workers with 2 Zealots.
Yeah,
No.
I think if he just like keeps those Zealots alive, starts running, then when the first Stalker comes in, then he creates such a big problem for Bomber. Because how do you micro against a Stalker and 2 Zealots running around? Even if those Zealots are relatively low in HP, you make it so much more intense for a Terran player to defend, and above all, get that bunker up. Because as long as that bunker won't be up, Stalkers can go in all day, every day.
Yeah, that's, well, CranK's clearly already shown us what we expected from him. Very aggressive play. Now it's time to see what Bomber has prepared for game number 2. Maybe CranK will have something else up his sleeve for this map. We're playing out on Habitation Station for game number 2 of this Terran versus Protoss in our second match for Group D of WCS America. Spawning in the top right position as our red Terran player, the former StarTale player, it is Bomber. He's not afraid of the cheddar that was brought by this Protoss player. In the top left from Axiom, it is CranK.
Bomber, of course, one of the most popular foreign Terrans that there is, and you know, for all the good reasons, because he's been so successful. He's been such a fun character to follow. It's not for nothing that a company like Red Bull decided to give him a personal sponsorship, because like, hey, we want to keep you around. We want you to represent our pretty cool company. But of course, I want to show some love to CranK as well, because not many people have been as consistent as CranK within WCS. Because WCS 2013 Season 1 made it into the round of 8. Season 2, round of 16. Season 3, round of 16. Season 1 of 2014, at least round of 16 again. That is super impressive, Nathan. There's almost no player who went to every single offline event, because of course round of 16 is always played offline. So mad love to CranK for showing consistency that might be overlooked because he didn't have that legendary run yet, that top 2 or top 4 run. But going top 16, top 8 is super impressive.
Yeah, I'm honestly just a fan of all the Axiom guys. CranK is he's a funny dude if you've ever watched his stream, and he very clearly works hard. Like you said, he's had fantastic results, and he is a fun player to watch. This is a type of Protoss style that you see that it's not just your standard, well, I'm going to try to blink all in and kill you. No, it's I have a very special early aggressive play that will try to kill you with. And I think one thing immediately off the bat for this game, CranK has opened up with 2 fast gas, 6 probes very quickly mining, and Bomber's actually opening up gasless. We saw a similar style to this from Tasia earlier today.
I almost feel that this might be Stargate as soon as possible before almost anything else. I mean, not that quick that it's like the second pylon, but I still felt it was really quick, hoping that perhaps it wouldn't get scouted in a while, because this is not a Reaper expand map, but Bomber will scout with the SAV, so I wonder if that changes CranK's plan just a little bit, but we'll see. We're gonna find out in the near future.
Yeah, it's I mean, he's just trying to be aware of everything. This gas is technically slightly later, but he should still be able to get he might actually go I wonder if he's gonna go for like factory first lane, because that gas is at 16 supply instead of like starting at 15, but it's not a huge deal. Command center's on the way for Bomber, and CranK on this map with his gases fast. He doesn't have any probes out on the map. It's just a fast mothership core with this Stalker. You think he just expands behind this, just goes out, do a little bit of pressure?
But I still almost feel that it's gonna be a Stargate opening, because why else? It's going to be a Twilight opening on Habitation Station.
On this map.
That's not something you see very often, guys. Bomber opened Gasless once more because this is just one of the worst Reaper maps there is. Then he dropped the command center. After that, he did drop the refinery. He just don't really want to open up Reaper Expand on this map.
Yeah, this is actually what so he does get the factory before the reactor. This allows him to get straight marine production continued on, but you know, you said it's a bit unusual to see the Twilight Council opening. The Mothership Corps will go and scout out Bomber's base, but if I'm a Terran player and I see Twilight Council on this map, you can't be anything other than Dark Templar.
CranK got pretty unfortunate there because I felt that Mothership Corps got so quick, got so close to scouting that Rex and the factory, but he didn't see it. And that might seem like a minor thing, but that makes a world of difference. I would love to see if I'm playing against 1 Rex, 2 Rex, or Bomber's 3 Rex, or if I'm playing against a freaking factory, because that changes everything. We see Blink being researched, 3 more gates being added, 1 gate Blink Stalker, you know, it's not something that's particularly strong on this map, but because it's not, people don't expect it, and that might make it a little better again.
I would totally agree that on some maps, pulling a strategy that's not normally seen as good on it can be a smart move. But on this map, there's not really anywhere to go with this. I would be incredibly impressed if CranK made it work. It looks like with the position on this pylon, he's looking to utilize this very small cliff area, but if Bomber catches on, and I'll actually say the fact that Bomber started Stim with just 1 barracks and he's producing like, trickling mines out, not having detection will certainly make things annoying, but this is actually very low on units to defend against this type of attack.
Especially if he decides to send a medevac out as soon as he has one with the very few units that he has, because Bomber has no idea he's playing against this. Throws down the scan. What does he see? Absolutely nothing. But I still think, you know, the way that Bomber is going to defend this, in my opinion, is if he evacuates the low ground. But if he tries to defend both bases at once, then I think he's going to have a really hard time because he barely has any units. With the build that he decided to go for, he has no units to fight Blink Stalkers right now.
Yeah, and he just blinked straight into the main base. This was a very greedy build from Bomber. Very low production, very low amount of units, and not enough information. And you know what? I would say 99 times out of 10, the Blink is terrible on this map, but CranK he's getting right up in there. All the SCVs being forced to pull out phase. Widow Mines are good only because there's not detection. If he blinks in, if he can force him to blink out, blinking back in is going to hurt him a lot. And these Widow Mines actually get a surprising number of hits. He's not able to dodge those attacks.
Well, he loses quite a few Stalkers. 1 more Stalker going down, 1 Marauder joining in the fun as well.
Wait
I actually think Bomber is going to maybe be able to hold this.
No way. If Bomber holds, this is absolutely incredible. The medevac is nice. He's got just 1 Marauder. The way those Widow Mines are positioned, he can't blink in without being hit. It's not an easy type of Widow Mine attack to dodge, but now Bomber has to pull even more SCVs. Yeah. He still has 2 command centers, so he can get the mules out to keep himself alive for now, but he does need to clear all this out of his base very soon.
Surviving is all that matters for Bomber right now. If he survives, he can recover from losing all those probes. Widow Mine gets some shots off. 1 Widow Mine does fall, though. The other Widow Mine is trying to get really close, starting to get into a good position, perhaps. Good blinks, though, by CranK. He might just have a little too much.
Yeah, you know what? CranK is definitely the master of doing the last thing that you.
Then one Widow Mine is going to get a juicy shot. Oh, it's going to miss it. Well done there by CranK.
The jukes from CranK. He will not be stopped just yet, and Bomber will technically not be dead. He has the power of mules and a few SCVs, but...
Sick micro there by Bomber, trying to pick up those Marauders, trying to keep them alive for as long as possible, but there are just a few Stalkers too many, I'm afraid, and GG is called.
Wow.
CranK will win the 2nd game on Habitation Station with a cool strat, because it's normally so bad on this map, it makes it pretty good.
Yeah, it's actually interesting to think about all the other builds that would have been okay on this map normally against the Terran if you wanted to be aggressive. Bomber could have dealt with a fast starport and the Widow Mines. You know, that's more than enough. But against Blink, the way that he got that super fast stim, it was probably the only build that really would have killed him. And it's smart for Bomber to plan out for maps like that, but even smarter for CranK to say, yeah, you might actually try to take advantage of that.
CranK, very unpredictable Protoss. He's always been, for some reason, he's been paired up with nothing but Terrans so far in this WCS season. And if he wins this match, he would go on and face another Terran. That would be 4 out of 4. It would be even more ridiculous if he wins all 4 of those matches. That would be absolutely insane. So far, an excellent track record. He defeated Alive, and he also defeated Major. CranK is very happy. He also said today, he's like, make sure to cheer for me. I was like, well, CranK, I'm supposed to be kind of neutral. He's like, no, cheer for me. I was like, okay.
Yeah, cheer for me. His builds are the stuff of nightmares, that's for sure. And I You know, the next map is Frost. This is the standard map that everybody loves to play on. It's 4 players. It can be good for hiding tech if you want to do that, but it's also, you can also be a little bit greedier in the early game. Does CranK try to abuse that? Does he do something crazy greedy? I don't... It's impossible to predict what he's going to do.
Like, we should mention one thing that's very important. Often when Protoss players play like this, you expect them to play almost every game like this. With CranK, I do not think that's necessarily the case. His late game is actually pretty damn solid. The only phase in the game I'm a little bit worried about, if I was a CranK fan, is like his mid phase. Like, how well will he survive to that later stage in the game? Will he take a lot of damage? Will his upgrades be in time? Will he take another base? I know if he stabilizes on 3 bases, he gets high Templar spread out. He has pretty good map awareness. He drops good storms. He has excellent army control. But will Bomber be able to punish him in the phase in the game where Bomber really excels? You know, we know that like godlike speed.
If CranK's weak spot is the mid game, that's I think that's anybody's weakness to a player like Bomber. But we're loaded in, and we actually have a tied series here. These the Terran players in this group are heavily favored going into it. Can our Protoss player bring what could have been, what could be say, I think agreeably, is a bit of an upset if he were to take this series. His opponent in the top left position of Frost, the blue Terran player, sponsored by Red Bull, it is Bomber. I feel like he's going to try to play much more solid. I can't imagine there's any reason to take risks when you're so good in the mid game as Bomber is against a player like this in the Southeast. The red Protoss from Team Axiom, it is CranK.
I'd be very surprised if Bomber does anything else than a 1 Rex fast expand into 2 more Rexes. Like, I feel that this is almost his go-to build on this map. It's also so safe. There is nothing that it really dies to. Of course, there are still some builds you're going to struggle with a little bit, but at the end of the day, 1 Rex fast expand into 2 more Rexes is just so rock solid. And maybe he skips the 3rd Rex, but well, actually, it's pretty early guess.
Oh, wow, he's going gas first. The last, you know, it's kind of interesting. The last, we had a couple of gas first builds played on in this map against Protoss recently. The maps that come to mind are Maru in the recent Pro League, the Jin Air Green Wings, they were in one of the final matches. But this is interesting because I wouldn't see much of a reason why Bomber feels he needs to do something different like this. He can go for a very fast mine drop with a Hellion run by. He can go for very fast reactored Hellions with a drop. I don't think we'd see anything weird like a Banshee, but maybe CranK thinks that Bomber would play normally on this map.
What are the odds that he just mines 100 gas and just makes a Reaper and then a Reactor and then stops mining gas?
You know, I've seen Bomber once play very... it was against Rain in the GSL. I recall a game on Whirlwind where he did this. He actually went gas first. It got scouted, and he built he built like 1 or 2 Widow Mines out of a factory and just went 3 command centers out of it and just didn't actually end up being aggressive. So he has the potential to do something really weird, but I still think there's, like, this is just one of those maps where, because of how small the main base, the medevac is not as easy as, say, on like Yeonsu. So that's why I find this to be particularly interesting.
Yeah, I'm quite surprised by this as well. I really expected him to just go 1 Rex fast expand, but we'll see where Bomber takes this. His SUV is going to the south direction of Frost right now. Will not scout CranK at the first time, but he will get him the second time. CranK at the other end is going to go basically the quickest nexus you can after opening up with a gate and a cyber core. He's going to follow this up with the mothership core, which is going to usher this SUV out as well.
Okay, so Bomber's stopped mining gas, and he's built a reactor after 1 Marine. So this is a Hellion heavy opening. I find it interesting that he's not mining any gas. He doesn't want to try to drop with this. He just wants to bring a lot of forward pressure with Hellions. The kind of cool thing about this, and I know you might have seen this in your own games, is if you get enough Hellions, 4 to 6, you can actually challenge a Stalker that's out on the map for map control, and that can be pretty annoying to deal with as a Protoss player.
Yeah, that can be very frustrating, but I do not think that CranK is going to do that, considering the fact how quick his Nexus was. Bomber is going to see the mothership core, he's going to see this Nexus as well, and his SUV is kind of trapped right now. As Beta would say, Hotel California, you can check in, but you never leave.
It's a sad life for that worker. It's a very sad life. And I kind of like that he's been able to get this fast expand with this very fast reactor. I don't think this is a build that's incredibly popular. Even in the only other time I've seen gas first recently on this map was for a build that involved a very fast medevacs. But double forge at 5 minutes for CranK.
Will most likely be a Colossus opening then, don't you think so? Behind this, eventually.
I mean, he has to get a Twilight Council. It's really stretching it, but this is the kind of build that says you're not going to be aggressive against me. I think I can take advantage of this in a weird way, and he's going to kill maybe 1-2 probes. It's not bad. If he gets into the main base, a couple more would be.
Forges.
Yeah, if he sees those forges.
This is actually really paying off for Bomber already. These two Hellions doing a fantastic job. He's going to see both of these forges as well. Wow. Those two Hellions really paid for themselves, and I guess that's why Bomber is Bomber, and he went for this opening, and it really worked out.
What a weird way to open for Bomber. Just 2 Hellions that he gets to get a little bit of scouting information with, but also switches straight back into Marines in case there was anything else you'd have to worry about, like an Oracle. And if you're a CranK, I guess you're already kind of stuck in this.
I mean, like, Bomber scouted, but imagine CranK would have proxied in Stargate on the north side of the map.
Yeah.
Then it's just, you're dead. You're, like, absolutely dead. Imagine if it's, like, a super quick starport of the second pylon. Sometimes, you know, Protoss players just take a guess. It's like, I'll build my starport over here, because then I have a 66% chance of being close to your base. If that would have happened, I think he would be absolutely dead. But fortunately for Bomber, that did not happen.
The assumed risks, and I guess the inherent advantage of a 4-player map is that CranK, without sending out a very fast probe to scout it or place that proxy, doesn't have an opportunity to punish that. And Bomber will move into his starport. He has added just 1 barracks, so this is kind of like a 2-rack style. He actually gets incredibly fast medevacs, not that fast as a stim, but this does mean that he can go for fast drop harass.
But he has 3 orbitals.
Yeah, disgusting amount of economy.
This is ridiculous. Like, he's down 6 workers right now, but he's basically up. Considering the fact that this is indeed a triple orbital opening, it is absolutely obnoxious how quick those medevacs will be entering this battlefield. Because that's not supposed to happen. Against a triple orbital, Nathan, you're supposed to be safe at least till like 10, 30, 11 as a Protoss player.
I mean, most Terran players never even open triple orbital versus Protoss anymore. It's such a risk like this if your opponent does try to be aggressive, but those Hellions give you such a weird amount of information that I guess he feels comfortable with this. And knowing that it's double forge, I can't fault him for that. Obviously, we shouldn't see the Protoss try anything until 2-2, and now the Twilight Council finishes just as 1-1 completes. There's a scan from CranK, he sees gateways being added, but there's no actual Templar. Okay, as I said, the Templar tech begins.
Well, then I feel this is the type of game where Bomber should definitely put another reactor on that factory and start producing some Widow Mines like we've seen him do in the past already, even before those Widow Mines got a buff. And I think that would be fantastic for him.
I think if you think about, what, 6 Widow Mines if he gets with his army, I don't think any number of... If he goes for 2-2 with, like, Charge and Archons, he should destroy that.
I think this is starting to shape up pretty good for Bomber. I think this is the type of strategy that he likes playing against. I feel that he's been getting better and better at it. We all know that Bomber is close to a god when it comes to splits. When it's either against storms or just putting his army in good positions. With those Widow Mines, even improved from the previous times when he already used them. Because Bomber basically had a small edge with his strategy because he was already using it way before most other Terrans were using it.
Yeah, this is really cool to see. I can't say this is a scenario that often occurs in this matchup. It's 2 players that are trying to metagame each other in weird ways, and it kind of just shows the understanding that these guys have of each other. The very fast upgrades versus the supercharged economy, and now Bomber trying to squeeze in a few Widow Mines to harass.
And now he's going to have to wait. I mean, he might sacrifice 1 probe indeed. And then he's going to have to wait to make sure that... I think it takes a little longer for the cannon than it does for the Widow Mine to shoot. I believe cannon is 45. No, actually 40. So I guess...
He started the cannon barely before, so it should be done on time. But if it takes like 2 or 3 shots, it might be able to fire
If
again.
Photon Overcharge runs out, then that Widow Mine will shoot again. But because there is still Photon Overcharge and then the cannon shooting it as well, I do not think it's going to fire again.
Yeah, it definitely should. It's already lost a bit of damage. 2 shots and barely picked off. And he drops 1 Marine. Well, that guy...
I think that Marine was trying to be like the bait. He's like, shoot at me.
Did he have to die?
Shoot at me, man. I'm the real target over here. Ignore the mine. Not often do you see a mine being sacrificed for a human body.
Yeah, he tried to take one for the team, it seems.
Didn't jump on the grenade, but he jumped on the planet, on the Nexus with Photon Overcharge. That's a real bro.
That's a dangerous game to be playing. Bomber has quite a few medevacs. 3 loaded at the bottom, 2 up top. And this is a very scary attack to deal with. Does he have any more energy for Photon Overcharge? Can he cover both bases? Just one.
There are 6 High Templars though, and that is something that you have to worry about. This cannon is of course not a waste of investment, because that cannon is going to help out a lot against the drops. If Bomber is able to deny this third base, which isn't even there yet, I guess he will be safe for now. At the same time, you see a bunch of Zealots running on the north side of the map. It's a little sloppy from Bomber that he didn't have any unit there, but I guess he will be okay. He loses a little bit of money.
Yeah, I mean, without the third base on the Protoss, it's like, as long as he doesn't lose all the workers, he's pulled most of them away. If he holds onto it, he's still okay, because, like I said, there is no third for CranK.
And how is CranK gonna take it to it? By the time that he really wants to go up to 3 bases, he's gonna have to run through a field of Widow Mines, I feel.
Yeah. How many do we have? He's producing. He has 4 right now, and he's continuing to produce some Storm Drop. Pretty nice play. Actually, how many workers did he grab? 17 total this game. He picked off a few at that third base. That is not bad at all.
And this is what we said before the game. Just because CranK does a lot of early game cheese doesn't mean that that's the only thing he can do. He has a lot of tricks up his sleeves as well in any phase in the game. Here we can see how effective those Widow Mines can be as well. And not just like in the battles, but also dealing with run-bys. Something we were talking a little bit about yesterday.
Yeah, pretty solid for defense. The Warp Prism is making its rounds back towards that natural. Missile turret is not done yet. He could just try to drop one Zealot off. He will actually just move away.
But this is nice though for CranK. He's buying himself a lot of time, but still no third Nexus on the map. So as nice as this all is, I would have loved to see him take a third Nexus during this, because even though he's dealing some economic damage, he's still being severely outmined.
Yeah, and you know what? It shows in the supply count. Bomber is still putting out quite a few units. His +2 attack will be done soon, and keep in mind that despite how fast the 2-2 was, no 3-3 has been started for CranK, so Bomber can catch up soon.
CranK is running across the map. This is something that we've seen a lot in the past. You don't see it a whole often these days. CranK is going to try to win this game on 2 bases. He has 10 High Templars right now.
Bomber really needs to kill this Warp Prism. If he forces a fight with that Charge Lot army with that many storms, it's such a smart play to get this Viking, because if he pulls him out with that main army and then drops a huge warp inside the main base.
6 storms again. CranK is playing some fantastic StarCraft here in this game, playing a pretty bizarre strat. Storms are fantastic, but he needs something else to really finish off this bio force. What often happens is that these storms do a lot of damage, but if they don't finish off the units, then you're still in a little bit of trouble. But he's gonna kill that orbital, lands another juicy storm on the SCVs. He must have killed like 30 SCVs by now, or 35.
Yeah, the upgrades have been evened out now as well. He has that +2 attack, which is, I feel, the most important versus this many Zealots. There's actually still 7 Widow Mines, not making the game-changing hits yet. There's the storms. He's continuing to press him back, but I have to agree with you. Aside from the storms, there's not too much more to actually fight against these units. Just those 3 Immortals trying to wreak havoc, but there's a lot of Marines for Bomber. His supply still holding strong. More Templar come from behind, and he's going to hit a very large amount of these forces.
Doing a lot of damage there with these 2 High Templars that were full of energy. So that's 4 storms, but still it's only the storms dealing damage. And this is something I was worried about in the start of the fight. I felt CranK was doing so well. Those storm drops were amazing. The Warp Prism harassment was good. Running across the map was good, but you know, a bunch of Blink Stalkers even, well, normally you don't want Blink Stalkers. Well, this SCV is desperately going to repair this orbital because that's necessary. But Stalkers at least finish off units. They're not very strong in a straight-up fight, but he needed something to finish off the damage that Storm was dealing to those units.
Yeah, CranK has 4 Templar back home, hoping to defend against this attack with, and Bomber's like, you're taking a 3rd base? How could you possibly try to hold on to that? He doesn't even care about the 3rd. He just wants to go kill CranK. And these Templar just hit enough energy for Storm, so, I mean, how hard do you have to overextend yourself to die at this point if you're Bomber? I don't know. He's adding on a lot of cannons to defend against these mines.
There are not a whole lot of bio units in this little army. Okay, actually he's hiding a lot behind them. Storms landing from the high ground, but these are the storms that Bomber wanted, because now the real units will come in. He's like, that was just the start of my army. I kept some units in the back. And CranK with only 86 supply, the cannons trying to buy a little bit of time. It's not a good storm. I would still love to see Bomber just take out that 3rd Nexus, you know. Come on, Bomber.
It does make you feel a little bit anxious when you're looking at it. And there were a couple more Templar warped in the back. There's 1 more Storm available. A few more Templar trying to get the energy together. But I like that Bomber's not putting his whole army forward. He's leaving just a little bit, soak up a couple of those Storms, but still have enough bile left over to overpower the rest of these Zealots. CranK can't push out because there's still like 4 or 5 Widow Mines here.
Yep, and he has no Photon Overcharge either. The Mothership Core has died. He recalled it, so he already had no energy, and then it died afterwards. So Bomber in a good position supply-wise. I find it a little bit close, but that's probably because Bomber has lost so many SCVs. We all know that Bomber in general enjoys losing SCVs because that means his army is bigger. Right now, that's not necessary. That's not a good storm, though. All of these manufacturers can run low on energy. Okay, a few more are coming in.
And he will be able to pick off this natural expansion nexus, just putting just Marauders for the units that have the most hit points to lose to those storms. And you're CranK, you're pretty much on one base. I mean, the odds of you getting those probes over to that third nexus, which Bomber will now set his sights on, were already close to nothing. And I don't see how CranK ever gets out of his natural. He might be able to make another push, but can he afford to rebuild?
He doesn't have that many storms anymore either, even though that army is really clumped up. So I feel the Bomber has to be a little careful, but Bomber is playing this out very well. He's going to relocate that third orbital now as well. He's going to send it to the south side. Still doing an excellent job. Upgrades 2-1 against 2-2 is not that bad for Bomber at all. Up 50 supply. As long as he keeps CranK on 2, or in this case 1 base, he's of course in a fantastic position.
Yeah, 110 army supply to 45. CranK does not have too much left. Throws out another storm. Widowmine's Burrow at the bottom of this ramp, and he's just saying, yep, just come accept defeat, CranK. Another storm drops on just a few Marauders, and there's just too much for Bomber left. He's almost doubling his opponent's army supply now, and CranK actually dances the Immortals and taps out. GG. Bomber will advance to the winners match to face off against Pulp for a TVT.
Those two have played against each other in the past, and it's always fireworks when those two clash in the TVT series. But still, I really enjoyed that last game, Nate. I thought CranK was doing very well. In the start, I was a little worried. I was like, where is he going to take this? Then the storm drop. Okay, that's cool. The Warp Prism still active. The Zealots on the north side. And then the army coming across the map. I was like, this is starting to look really good. What I think he should have done is just kept harassing as soon as he forced that third base to relocate. He should have just taken the third base on his own on the other side of the map and then get that army back. He had the Mothership Core with his army as well. I do not think he had to take the fight. He had a lot of High Templars, he had a lot of storms. He could have just landed those storms and then back off because, like we said, he had nothing to truly finish off the units. A lot of damage, a lot of burst damage from those storms, but nothing that actually shot down those low HP units, and that was the biggest problem.
Yeah, I find it hard to disagree. Once you get when you get a storm drop like yeah, exactly. You get a storm drop like that. What do you need to do? Take the third base. And I think he started it after he'd already forced Bomber's third to lift off and killed some even more SCVs, and even that still felt a little bit late. But you know, at what point are you overextending with an attack like that? Bomber is not going to stop making units just because he's under pressure, and he had that third base for so long that he was able to afford to put out, well, a ridiculous number of units. So it was interesting, and it was definitely a better game from CranK. It was cool to see him play out the macro game at those very greedy forages, but just not quite enough.
Yeah, I definitely enjoyed it, and I can't wait to see what Paul has to say about that, who's most likely together with you and Mello as well. So guys, take it away.
Thanks very much, Kevin. Yeah, I am here with Le Todd, as he calls you.
You and Merlo this time.
Johan Merlo this time.
Finally
really,
calling me something else.
Yeah, it's nice of him to actually use your real name for a change. Much closer than perhaps we thought it would be, or at least I thought it would be. You said it was going to be a bit closer than people maybe thought it would be a stomp, and we got probably a better game of it. But when you break it down, it's 2-1, and you think, oh, okay, that's a decent result for CranK. He's giving him a good go. In reality, was it actually that close? Because that second map was a blink all in anyway, and Bomber didn't hold on to it.
It was pretty close. The last game, I think, there is a few ways the attack that CranK went for could have worked. The blink all in was super interesting. I think so many people assume that there is no way you can blink from that third base. Or outside, they're like, Habitation? Terrible blink map. And then suddenly you have CranK doing that build where basically he was hoping that Bomber would hope that... he was hoping that Bomber would think that he was going for some kind of Oracle, which is the defense, Blink and Oracle is the opposite. Against Oracle, you need turrets, you need Marines in your main. You don't have enough in your expansion, and at this point, as much as the attack was in the main, it was there wasn't enough. It was very close, by the way. That Blink all in, for a moment, I thought he was going to get crushed.
Yeah, until he walked in a couple more Stalkers, it was a bit like, oh, hello, this is a bit dodgy. And then suddenly it started to swing his way, and then you thought, oh, okay, actually, the supply is dropping like mad now. He's going to lose this. But in the end, Bomber's won out. Why?
Just too solid overall, especially in that last game. The big attack with all the Templars and all that. There is one Terran in a million that can hold it, I think, and it's
this man.
It's this man. Well, there's a few other ones that I can think of in the world, but
he actually did
just
it.
them.
Why don't you show us the big fight?
We can go into the replay here, and okay, we are at the 14th minutes and 40 seconds, and the supply Bomber is actually ahead in army supply, but there is so many storms available. This is why this timing is going to be strong. The upgrades as well for the Protoss. He opened double forge, so obviously he was able to do well with that. I think he was 2-2 at the time. He had charge. I don't think there is any real effective way to counter storms, but if you just look at the Templars, he's on 10 Templars or something like that, right? How many Templars does he have? 10 in total. He has 2 back at home, so it should be 8 in attack. He has so many storms available. This is the reason you attack now, because if you wait until there are ghosts, you're going to do very, very bad against this. If you have the Templars and you just walk in there, you get sniped, you get EMP'd. So CranK is going to get in there, and even though he's behind on supply, if he hits very good storms, there is a way he can win this. Especially getting a good attack here, it's very possible, because you force the Terran to go into this area where he has to defend. So he's going to get in there, and we can play it from here and see how it goes for Bomber, who has his army a little bit spread out. There was some action in the main as well, where he had to defend, and now he's going to run back there with everything he has. He pulls SCVs immediately. The Widow Mines were very important. There is no observer here around this. There is a single observer. Actually, right now and on the map, I'm not even sure where it is. It's across the map. He just made it. So, good storm hits this portion of the army. But Bomber, as long as he does not get showered completely in those storms, he should be able to hold on and win the fight. That storm it kills some SCVs, but you need to save that for the army at this point. You don't try. CranK is not trying to weaken the economy of his opponent. He's trying to crush his army, end the game right there, or at least kill as much as possible, and not in SCVs, in army. So another storm hits, but look, he hits his zealots here. This kind of misses, and at this point there are units coming in from behind. All of this is fighting against all those Immortals, the Archons. 2 more Templars with full energy come in, but all the army already died. You look at the supply. Everything already disappeared. So it's some more storms. The time warp doesn't really matter at the end of that fight. Should have been used before, but he left that at home before in defense. And there is no way. I think the army supply, you noted it to me, at this point was 74 to 15, in which case coming back is going to be difficult.
Yeah, from 15 army supply. Yeah, absolutely. So GG, Bomber goes through, and we've ended up with probably the winner's bracket final we thought we would get, which is Bomber versus Polt. It's going to be a cracker. It's 2-2 head-to-head right now as well. The interesting thing is, despite the fact that they've both been so good over the last 18 months or so, or at least since Heart of the Swarm came out over a year ago, neither of them have actually met in Heart of the Swarm.
Well, you got your wish here as the 2 Terrans. They are going to meet each other, and I think this is going to be fireworks. These 2 guys, they are very, very good in mirror matchup, in my opinion. Polt, maybe not as known.
No, I mean, when you look at his stats, actually, he's rank 1 in the world right now for TVP.
In
TVP,
okay.
And rank 1 in TVZ, but a lowly rank 6 in the world for TVT. I mean, it's terrible, isn't it? Oh my God, he sucks at TVT. And then you look over at Bomber, TVT rank 8 in the world. There is nothing between them.
Yeah, but remember, not too long ago, he was like 90-something% in TVT, and he was feeling very confident. He was beating everyone. Polt, though, he's definitely used of those high-level TVTs. He's beat guys like Teja before in big tournaments, and he's always been very high up there. What I like about both of these players is that they can play Marine Tank extremely well in mirror matches, and that's, for me, even as a Protoss player, I love to watch Marine Tank.
Even as a Protoss player, the fact that either of these players impress you is impressive to me.
Just trying to say that since I know less about the matchup, it's hard for me to appreciate some of the things they do. But watching Marine Tank versus Marine Tank is like super positional play and all that.
I understand.
Constant action with multitask and all.
Yeah, no, I think it's very difficult not to appreciate our 2 Terrans that are in Group D. They are going to meet in the winners' final, where one of them will advance through to the round of 8. Of course, if they lose, they've still got another chance in the lower bracket, and we'll also follow that bracket right through to its conclusion. At the end of this evening, we'll also bring you the round of 8 draw to find out who's got who in the quarterfinals. Stay tuned. Quick break coming up. When we come back, though, it's one you don't want to miss. Go and tell your friends, your family, and the people in the street it's time to turn on StarCraft 2. It's the Terrans in action with Bomber versus Polt.